More than 60 years have passed since Green Acres first flickered onto American television screens, and the people who made it unforgettable went on to live lives that were stranger, sadder, and more extraordinary than anything Paul Henning could have written for them. One of them was almost completely deaf during the entire run of the show, and nobody outside the production knew. Another began her career planning to become a minister, won a role over 400 other actors, and spent the rest of her life preaching across the country long after the cameras went dark. A third played the same character simultaneously on 3 separate television series, and became the only actor in the history of American broadcasting ever to achieve that feat. One was a Goldwyn girl who became lifelong friends with Lucille Ball, and then lost the role of Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy for a reason that says everything about Hollywood in the 1950s. And 2 of them are buried just yards apart in the same Los Angeles cemetery. 2 friends who started an unlikely life together on a Hooterville farm and ended up, in death, as neighbors for eternity. This is what happened to the cast of Green Acres. All of it. The parts they never talked about in interviews. When Green Acres premiered on CBS in September of 1965, one of its most beloved recurring figures was already one of the oldest men working in American television. Hank Patterson was 76 years old when the series began. He played Fred Ziffel, the weathered, cantankerous farmer next door, whose proudest achievement in life was raising a pig named Arnold as though he were a human son. It was an absurdist role in an absurdist show, and Patterson inhabited it with a deadpan sincerity that made it work completely. What the audience watching at home had no way of knowing was that by the time he appeared on screen each week, Hank Patterson was almost entirely deaf. He had been born Elmer Calvin Patterson on October 9, 1888, in Springville, Alabama, a name that tells you everything about the world he came from. He was one of 7 children. His family relocated to Taylor, Texas during the 1890s, and it was there that young Elmer developed a serious love of music, studying piano with genuine ambition. The ambition didn't lead where he had hoped. Instead of a concert career, he became a vaudeville pianist, traveling the country with revues and road shows before eventually making his way to California in the late 1920s. Film work followed, decades of it, nearly all of it uncredited, nearly all of it in westerns. He played blacksmiths, storekeepers, frontier townspeople, cantankerous old coots of every variety. His face became familiar without his name ever becoming known. He appeared in Shane. He appeared in The Twilight Zone. He played a stable hand named Hank Miller for 11 years on Gunsmoke, and then came Fred Ziffel. By the time Green Acres went into production, Patterson's hearing had deteriorated so severely that he could no longer follow normal dialogue cues. The producers loved what he brought to the character too much to let him go. Their solution was practical and quietly remarkable. They had his dialogue coach lie flat on the floor, out of camera range, tapping Patterson's leg with a yardstick whenever it was his moment to speak. The cast and crew worked around it every single week for 6 seasons without ever letting it slip publicly. He and his wife Daisy had been married since 1915, a span of 60 years. Hank Patterson died of bronchial pneumonia on August 23, 1975, in Woodland Hills, California, at the age of 86, just 4 years after the show left the air. He died at home, the same home where, by all accounts, very little was said out loud that he could hear. But his timing somehow was always perfect. She was Fred Ziffel's wife. She was Arnold the Pig's devoted television mother. And she was, in the years before Hooterville, one of the hardest luck stories in Hollywood. Barbara Pepper played Doris Ziffel in the first 3 seasons of Green Acres, from 1965 to 1968, appearing in nearly 30 episodes before her health made it impossible to continue. She was 50 years old when the show began. The journey that had taken her there, from the Ziegfeld Follies to the Goldwyn Girls, to decades of near misses and small parts and a private life that kept taking things away from her, was the kind of story that didn't make the entertainment columns because it didn't resolve tidily enough for that. Barbara Pepper was born Marion Pepper on May 31st, 1915, in New York City, the daughter of actor David Mitchell Pepper. She was 16 years old when she walked into the entertainment business against her parents' express wishes, securing a spot in Florin Ziegfeld Jr.'s Follies and changing her first name to Barbara in the process. It was in The Goldwyn Girls, the famous dance company assembled for Eddie Cantor's 1933 film, Roman Scandals, that she met the person who would become the most enduring friendship of her life, a young woman named Lucille Ball. The two women connected immediately, and their friendship lasted until Pepper's death. They kept in touch through careers that diverged in every conceivable direction. Ball toward the top of American comedy, Pepper toward the margins. Through the 1930s and 1940s, Barbara Pepper worked steadily in films, developing what her colleagues called a hard-boiled dame persona, brassy, sharp, street smart. She appeared in Of Mice and Men in 1939, A Star is Born in 1954, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World in 1963, and My Fair Lady in 1964. She worked on the same lot as Ball, appearing in 8 episodes of I Love Lucy over 4 seasons. There was a moment in the early years of that show's production when she had been considered for the role of Ethel Mertz, the role that went to Vivian Vance and helped define a generation of American comedy. The reason Barbara Pepper didn't get it, William Frawley, who played Fred Mertz, was already known to have a problem with alcohol, and the producers felt that casting another actor with the same issue would eventually create difficulties. Pepper was passed over. Vivian Vance was cast instead. That single casting decision may have altered the entire trajectory of Barbara Pepper's career. In 1943, she married actor Craig Reynolds. They had 2 sons. In 1949, Reynolds was killed in a motorcycle accident in California. She was left to raise their children alone. She never remarried. As the years passed, her weight increased, and Hollywood's narrow definition of what a woman was allowed to look like on screen steadily reduced the kinds of roles she was offered. The steady paychecks became irregular. The roles became smaller. Green Acres gave her 3 seasons of consistent, visible work, and a character that audiences genuinely loved. The warm-hearted, slightly scatterbrained woman who worried about Arnold's homework and discussed his social development with the same seriousness that other parents brought to their actual children. Her heart disease, worsening throughout 1967 and 1968, eventually forced her to leave the show. Fran Ryan replaced her in the role for the final 3 seasons. Barbara Pepper's last screen appearance was in the Jerry Lewis comedy Hook, Line, and Sinker in 1969, a film released as it happened after her death. Barbara Pepper died of a coronary thrombosis on July 18, 1969, in Panorama City, California, at the age of 54. She is buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Lucille Ball outlived her by 20 years. If you remember Green Acres, you remember Ralph Monroe, the wiry, capable, irrepressibly cheerful handywoman who arrived on the scene with her brother Alf and proceeded to leave every renovation project around Hooterville either unfinished or cheerfully catastrophic. Mary Grace Canfield played her with a physical comedic authority that made her scenes some of the most reliably funny in the show's run. She was 40 years old when the series began, and she had spent most of her adult life in exactly the kind of work that should have prepared someone for fame, and hadn't quite until Hooterville came along. Mary Grace Canfield was born on September 3, 1924, in Rochester, New York, the daughter of parents who gave her no theatrical inheritance, just a childhood in Pittsford, an early sense of certainty about what she wanted to do with her life, and the stubbornness to do it. She told an interviewer once, "I didn't want to go to college because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. What she wanted was the stage, and she went after it without hesitation, training for 3 years at the Hedgerow Theater in Pennsylvania, before launching a career in regional theater, summer stock, and Broadway. She made her Broadway debut in 1947, playing an elderly woman in a production of Brecht's Galileo at the age of 22, cast against type and pulling it off. Broadway came further. She appeared in The Waltz of the Toreadors, The Frogs of Spring, and several other productions that ran briefly and left small traces. She guest starred on The Andy Griffith Show. She played a housekeeper on a short-lived sitcom called The Hathaways. She appeared in Disney's Pollyanna in 1960. She played Harriet Kravitz, Abner's sister, in 4 episodes of Bewitched in 1966. None of it made her famous. Ralph Monroe did, 41 episodes across the show's 6-year run, each one making the most of her gift for physical comedy and her ability to play genuine enthusiasm without ever making it look like a performance. She reunited with the cast for the 1990 television movie Return to Green Acres, reprising the role with the same energy. In her later years, she moved to Maine, a state she had fallen in love with during summer stock productions there decades earlier, earning the nickname Surrey's Favorite from the Bangor News when she was barely 21. She settled quietly into a life far from Hollywood. She was twice married, first to Charles Orlebar Carey Jr., then to John Theodore Bischoff in 1984. She made her last public appearance in 2005, attending Eddie Albert's funeral alongside Frank Cady and Sid Melton, the cast paying their respects at the grave of the man who had anchored their world. Mary Grace Canfield died of lung cancer on February 15, 2014, in Santa Barbara, California, at the age of 89. With her death, Tom Lester became the last surviving regular cast member of Green Acres, a distinction he held for 6 more years, until his own death in 2020. Few television characters have ever been built around a single comedic device, as elegant and as reliably devastating as Hank Kimball's self-contradiction. The county agricultural agent of Hooterville would arrive with a statement, negate it, correct the negation, negate the correction, and then lose track of the entire enterprise entirely, usually leaving Oliver Wendell Douglas staring into the middle distance with the look of a man who has just accepted his own defeat. "Good morning, Mr. Douglas." Well, it's not a good morning, but it's not a bad morning either. Alvy Moore delivered this routine with such blameless sincerity for 6 seasons and 142 episodes that it never grew old. He was 43 years old when the series began, and behind him lay a war, a Broadway stage, and a career's worth of near misses. Jack Alvin Moore was born on December 5, 1921 in Vincennes, Indiana, and grew up in Terre Haute. He studied drama at Indiana State Teachers College, then served in the United States Marines during World War II. He fought in the Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest campaigns in Pacific theater history. In that single engagement, the Marines suffered over 26,000 casualties in 36 days of combat. Moore was among those who came home. He never liked to talk about it. When a fellow actor once pressed him on what those days were like, according to those who were present, Moore acknowledged the question and then quietly moved on to something else. What he carried from that experience, he kept private. When he came home, he studied further at the Pasadena Playhouse, then made his way to Broadway, where he succeeded David Wayne as Ensign Pulver in the landmark production of Mr. Roberts opposite Henry Fonda. He toured with the play for 14 months. He appeared in dozens of films and television series across the 1950s. 2 episodes of The Dick Van Dyke Show, a guest spot on The Andy Griffith Show, uncredited faces in countless pictures, and worked without distinction or recognition until Hank Kimball gave him both simultaneously. After Green Acres, he produced low-budget genre films, took guest roles in Little House on the Prairie and The Waltons, lent his voice to animated series, and appeared in horror films like Scream and Intruder. He guest starred on Frasier, one of his final television appearances. In his spare time, he umpired Little League Baseball in the San Fernando Valley. He drove a white Chrysler with a license plate that read GRNACRS, which tells you everything you need to know about how he felt about that chapter of his life. He was proud of it, without embarrassment. He and his wife Carolyn were married for 47 years. His Green Acres co-star, Tom Lester, was with him when he died. On his gravestone, his family chose the words, "Mr. Wonderful of Hollywood," a phrase he had used in the driest possible deadpan to introduce himself on the telephone for years. He would call someone, they would ask who it was, and he would say, "It's Mr. Wonderful of Hollywood." Nobody apparently ever asked him to explain it. Alvy Moore died of heart failure on May 4, 1997, at his home in Palm Desert, California, at the age of 75. That is the correct way to be remembered. In the fictional world of Hooterville, Sam Drucker ran the general store. He was the calm center of a universe of eccentrics, the one person you could count on to make a sentence that started and finished in the same place, to hand you your groceries without negotiating their spiritual significance, to remain sensible when everyone around him had decided that sensibility was optional. Frank Cady played him with a warmth and understatement that grounded 3 separate television series simultaneously. He was 49 years old when Green Acres began. He was already playing Sam Drucker on Petticoat Junction. He would shortly begin playing him on the Beverly Hillbillies as well. The same character, 3 shows, all at once. Something no other actor in the history of American television has managed before or since. Frank Randolph Cady was born on September 8, 1915, in Susanville, California, a small town in the mountains of Lassen County. He studied drama at Stanford University, met his future wife Shirley while teaching acting there, and served in the military during World War II. After the war, he worked as a radio broadcaster, then began the slow, careful work of building an acting career from the outside in. Small parts, supporting roles, the kind of faces that anchor a scene without drawing attention to themselves. He appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window in 1954 in a small part seen by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. He appeared in an episode of Make Room for Daddy that was used as the backdoor pilot for the Andy Griffith Show, meaning that Frank Cady was present at the birth of one of the most beloved series in American television history. And most people who know Andy Griffith wouldn't recognize his face. He played Doc Williams on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet for over a decade. He was always there, reliable and invisible, until Sam Drucker made him visible. As Sam Drucker, Cady appeared in 142 of 170 Green Acres episodes, a consistency of presence that rivaled the lead cast. He was one of only 3 actors who stayed with Petticoat Junction for its entire 7-year run. When asked once what the secret was to playing Sam Drucker, his answer was immediate. "I just play myself. Sam Drucker and I are old friends." Off the screen, Frank Cady was the definition of a man who had quietly figured out what mattered. He and Shirley relocated to Oregon in the early 1990s, where they spent their time hiking in Switzerland and playing golf. They were married 68 years. He attended Eddie Albert's funeral in 2005, along with co-stars Sid Melton and Mary Grace Canfield. Shirley died in 2008 at the age of 96. Frank Cady followed on June 8, 2012, at his home in Wilsonville, Oregon, also at the age of 96, the same age his wife had reached. No specific cause of death was given. He had lived with apparent contentment almost to the very edge of a century, and he spent most of that time being exactly who he appeared to be on screen. You have heard his voice. Even if you never watched Green Acres, you have heard his voice in animated Disney films, in television commercials, in cartoons from the 1970s and 1980s that shaped how you understood certain sounds before you ever thought about where they came from. But it was Mr. Eustace Haney who defined him for American television, the rolling store con man, the perennially optimistic swindler who arrived at Oliver Douglas's farm with some new scheme to sell him something he didn't need, didn't want, and couldn't have imagined existed, delivered with a voice that his owner once described as a sound that never quite made it through puberty, like a handful of gravel thrown in a mixmaster. He was 50 years old when the series began, and he had been making people laugh with that voice for 30 years already. Maxwell Emmett Buttram was born on June 19, 1915, in Addison, Alabama, the son of a Methodist minister named Wilson Buttram. A son of the clergy who planned to follow his father into the ministry, he enrolled at Birmingham Southern College to study theology, performed in college plays, worked on a local radio station, and then, in 1933, at a live performance of the WLS National Barn Dance in Chicago, was spotted in the audience, interviewed on the spot, and hired. Billed as the Winston County Flash, he became a radio comedian in Chicago for over a decade. In 1946, he went to Hollywood, intending to become Roy Rogers' sidekick. Rogers already had to, and dropped him. Gene Autry picked him up instead, and together they made more than 40 films and over 100 television episodes across 8 years. Pat Buttram spent the early 1950s as the nation's most familiar comic sidekick to America's most famous singing cowboy. The personal losses in his life were quiet and considerable. He had married actress Sheila Ryan in 1952, meeting her on the set of the Gene Autry picture Mule Train. She was a B-movie actress of real charm who had been signed to 20th Century Fox as a teenager and appeared in over 60 films. In 1974, they went on a Mexican cruise together. Sheila contracted a lung disease during the trip. She died on November 4th, 1975, in the Motion Picture Hospital in Woodland Hills, California, at the age of 54. Their daughter Carrie survived her by 32 years before dying of cancer in 2007. Buttram outlived his wife by almost 19 years and never remarried. He was a staunch Republican who helped Ronald Reagan sharpen his speeches with comic material. He retired from acting in 1980 and moved home to Alabama, then came back to California for personal appearances. He was a fixture at Western film festivals and fan events. Green Acres gave him a different kind of immortality. For 6 seasons, Mr. Haney was one of the funniest characters in American comedy, a shameless, lovable, endlessly inventive grifter who never quite pulled anything off, and never quite admitted defeat either. When CBS canceled the show in 1971, Buttram coined the observation that endures: CBS canceled everything with a tree in it, including Lassie. After the show ended, he found a second career as a Disney voice actor, Napoleon the Hound Dog in The Aristocats, the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Luke the Swamp Creature in The Rescuers, Chief the Hunting Dog in The Fox and the Hound, and one of the cartoon bullets in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. His final voiceover performance, for a Goofy movie, was released a year after his death. In 1983, he founded the Golden Boot Awards to honor contributions to Western film and television, a cause he championed with the seriousness of a man paying off a debt. Pat Buttram died of kidney failure on January 8, 1994, in Los Angeles, California, at the age of 78. He was buried in Haleyville, Alabama, in the cemetery of the Maxwell Chapel United Methodist Church, the same Methodist tradition his father had served his whole life. He beat 400 other actors for the role. And the decisive factor, according to Tom Lester himself, was that he was the only one who actually knew how to milk a cow. That detail is perfect. It is exactly the kind of practical, unexpected qualification that belongs in a story about a young man from Mississippi who moved to Hollywood on faith, got a break that defied every probability, and spent the next 6 years playing the farmhand with the irresistible grin who made Oliver Douglas's life simultaneously more difficult and more bearable. Thomas William Lester was born on September 23, 1938, in Laurel, Mississippi. The son of an accountant and a store manager, he grew up on his grandfather's farm. He graduated from the University of Mississippi with a degree in chemistry, then taught school in Oklahoma for 2 years. Before something in him said that wasn't the plan, he moved to Hollywood. He had become a born-again Christian as a teenager, and he interpreted his impulse toward acting as a calling, a conviction that God intended him to be in front of an audience, and that the audience would eventually lead somewhere meaningful. He attended the First Baptist Church of Beverly Hills. He took acting classes in the North Hollywood Playhouse. He auditioned for everything. Then came the phone call about a new CBS show, a character named Eb Dawson, and 400 other men standing between him and the part. He was 26 years old when Green Acres began, the youngest member of the regular cast. He appeared in 150 episodes over 6 seasons, missing a stretch of the 1967-68 season due to mononucleosis. The show explained his absence by saying Eb had eloped and was on his honeymoon, which is a satisfying solution. Even during the height of the show's success, Lester lived modestly, in a small apartment over a garage in the San Fernando Valley, not a mansion in the hills. Every summer, hiatus, he left California and traveled the country speaking at churches, youth rallies, and revival meetings. He worked at one point with Reverend Billy Graham's organization. The faith was not a persona, it was the organizing principle of his entire existence. After the cancellation, he was typecast, which is the quiet purgatory of character actors who make their role too vivid. He returned for the 1990 reunion film, Return to Green Acres. He went home to Mississippi. He continued as a traveling Christian speaker, appearing 3 times at Billy Graham Evangelistic Crusades. He won Mississippi's Wildlife Farmer of the Year award in 1997. He married for the first time in 2007 at the age of 68. He farmed his 250 acres in Jasper County. He attended fan conventions dressed as Eb. He referred to Eddie Albert until Albert's death in 2005 as his surrogate father, the man who had stepped into a fatherly absence that shaped him. With the death of Mary Grace Canfield in 2014, Tom Lester became the last surviving regular cast member of Green Acres. He held that distinction for 6 years. Tom Lester died of complications from Parkinson's disease on April 20th, 2020, in Nashville, Tennessee, at the age of 81. On his gravestone in Laurel, Mississippi, they put 4 words: Ebb of Green Acres. He would have liked that. It was the truth. She arrived in Hooterville in full-length gowns, with an accent that belonged in a European drawing room, and jewelry that would have looked excessive at the Metropolitan Opera. Lisa Douglas, the pampered Hungarian socialite dragged against her will to a dilapidated farm in rural America by her idealistic attorney husband, was a character built entirely on the comedy of wrong place, wrong time, and Eva Gabor played her with a warmth and a physical silliness that transformed what could have been an irritating caricature into one of the most beloved figures in American sitcom history. She was 46 years old when Green Acres began. She later called it the best 6 years of my life. She had, in truth, a great deal in common with Lisa. When she met President Lyndon B. Johnson at a state function, her greeting was entirely in character. "Hello, Mr. President, darling." She was already, by that point, a woman with several lifetimes behind her. Eva Gabor was born on February 11, 1919, in Budapest, Hungary, the youngest of 3 sisters, all of them daughters of a soldier named Vilmos Gabor and his wife Jolie, a jeweler and self-invented socialite of formidable ambition. The Gabor girls became, in their different ways, one of the defining social phenomena of mid-20th century America, creatures of glamour, appetite, and survival, who arrived in the New World with very little and constructed celebrity out of sheer force of personality. Eva was the first to emigrate. She moved to the United States before the Second World War, married her first husband, a Swedish osteopath, in London in 1937 when she was 18, and would prove herself, over the following decades, the most genuinely talented of the 3 sisters. Her older sister, Zia Jia, achieved greater fame, but Zia Jia was primarily a personality. Eva was an actress. She was married 5 times, though she once corrected interviewers who said 5 by insisting it was really 4.5, because 1 was on the rebound. Her 3rd marriage, to plastic surgeon John Elbert Williams, lasted 8 months. Her longest was to textile manufacturer Richard Brown, 13 years, encompassing the entire Green Acres run. She had no biological children. In the years after her final divorce in 1983, Eva became the constant companion of Merv Griffin, the television producer who created Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy! The two were inseparable at Hollywood functions. They planned to marry, with Nancy Reagan designated as matron of honor, but the wedding never took place. Griffin later said it was because they couldn't agree on whose house to live in, and Eva couldn't decide which members of her staff to keep. In later years, Eva founded Eva Gabor International, which grew into the world's largest wig and hairpiece company. The lightweight capless wig she introduced replaced traditional heavy netting and transformed the market. The business generated an estimated $30 million annually by the late 1980s and continued operating after her death. She also reunited with Eddie Albert on Broadway in a 1983 revival of You Can't Take It With You, and made the television film Return to Green Acres with him in 1990. Albert said afterward that he had probably spent more time with Eva during their 6 years on the show than any of her 5 actual husbands had. That is a statement of genuine warmth, and a joke, which she would have appreciated. In the summer of 1995, Eva Gabor was on vacation in Mexico when she fell in a bathtub. The injury led to respiratory complications. She was brought back to Los Angeles. Eva Gabor died on July 4, 1995, at the age of 76 from respiratory failure and pneumonia. Her funeral was held at the Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Beverly Hills on July 11th. She is buried in the Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. Just yards from her grave lies Eddie Albert, who played her husband for 6 years, her mother, Jolie, who had been kept unaware of Eva's death, and her sister Magda. Both died in 1997. Her sister, Zia Jia, the last of the 3, died in 2016 at 99. Eva had been the first to leave Budapest and the first to go, and now, him. The man without whom Green Acres would have been just another period comedy on a crowded schedule. Oliver Wendell Douglas, the Manhattan attorney who sells his Park Avenue life, buys a rundown Hooterville farm site unseen, drags his magnificent and wildly unsuitable wife into the rural wilderness, and then spends 6 seasons trying to make the land work while everything around him refuses to cooperate on even the most basic level, including the telephone, which hung from a tree. Eddie Albert played him as a man of unassailable idealism and zero practical competence, and he did it with such genuine earnestness and such precise comic timing that the character became, over 6 seasons, one of the most recognizable figures in American television history. He was 59 years old when the series began. Everything that had made him the man he was by that point constituted, taken together, one of the more remarkable biographies in Hollywood. Edward Albert Heimberger was born on April 22, 1906, in Rock Island, Illinois, the eldest of 5 children of German immigrants. He changed his name early. When he was singing on radio in a trio, the announcer kept introducing him as Eddie Hamburger, and he dropped his last name and adopted his middle name in its place. He worked as everything before becoming an actor, a soda jerk, a trapeze artist with a traveling circus, a nightclub singer, a radio broadcaster. Broadway found him in Brother Rat, and he was immediately signed by Warner Brothers to recreate the role on film. By the 1940s, he was an established Hollywood presence, versatile, likable, impossible to quite categorize. He received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor for Roman Holiday in 1953, alongside Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck, and a second nomination for The Heartbreak Kid in 1972. Then came the war. Eddie Albert was 36 years old when he enlisted, older than most and under no obligation. He joined the United States Navy and was assigned as a salvage officer aboard the transport USS Sheridan. What happened at the Battle of Tarawa in November 1943 defined him more profoundly than any film he ever made, even though he rarely spoke of it. The Marines came ashore under devastating Japanese fire. Coral reefs prevented the landing craft from reaching the beach, and the men had to wade 500 yards through waist-deep water under constant machine gun strafing. More than 100 were wounded and drowning in the surf. Albert, ignoring his salvage mission, steered his landing craft into the kill zone. He made multiple runs and commandeered 4 additional boats on his final pass, coordinating the effort under incendiary fire. He rescued 47 Marines directly and supervised the rescue of 30 more. He was awarded the Bronze Star with Combat V for valor. Years after the war, a veteran flagged him down on the street. "You pulled me out." The man turned to his children. "This is the man that pulled your papa out of the trouble." Albert later said that moment meant more to him than any award he had ever received. His environmental activism was not a celebrity gesture. He was one of the first figures in entertainment to commit publicly to conservation and sustainable agriculture, causes he had held since the 1950s, long before such positions were fashionable. He spoke at the first Earth Day in 1970, a date partly chosen to coincide with his April 22nd birthday. He founded the City Children's Farms program, grew organic vegetables in a greenhouse at his Pacific Palisades home, and spent decades fighting global hunger through Meals for Millions. His wife Margot, a Mexican actress whom he married in 1945 and loved for 40 years, died of brain cancer in 1985. Their son Edward Jr., also an actor, died of lung cancer in 2006 at the age of 55, 1 year after his father. After Green Acres ended, he continued working, Switch on CBS alongside Robert Wagner, a villainous role on Falcon Crest, the warden in The Longest Yard, and voice work for animated series into his 90s. He appeared in the first season Columbo episode Dead Weight in 1971 as a decorated general who commits murder, playing perfectly against his wholesome television image. In 1990, he reunited with Eva Gabor and the cast for Return to Green Acres. In his final years, he suffered from Alzheimer's disease, though those who visited him reported that he could still play basketball in a wheelchair with his granddaughter. His longtime friend and co-star attended his funeral in 2005. Eddie Albert died on May 26, 2005, at his home in Pacific Palisades, California, at the age of 99, 1 month after his 99th birthday. He was buried in Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Just yards away, Eva Gabor had been waiting for him for 10 years. There it is. Everything that Hooterville held, and everything that happened when its residents walked back out into the real world. A deaf man whose timing never failed him. A Goldwyn girl who lost Ethel Mertz and spent her final years raising a fictional pig. A woman from the stage who moved to Maine and barely said a word about any of it. The only actor in American television history to play the same character on 3 series at once. A gravel-voiced con man who buried his wife and then voiced Disney villains into old age. A boy from Mississippi with a chemistry degree who got the role because he could milk a cow. A Hungarian socialite who built a wig empire worth $30 million a year and was buried a few yards from the man she'd been fake married to on television. And a man who pulled nearly 80 soldiers out of the Pacific Ocean and spent the next 60 years trying to grow something in the California soil. They made 6 seasons of television. They made something that held together long enough to carry all of them, in one way or another, through the rest of their lives. Tell us in the comments, which of these stories surprised you most? And where in the world are you watching from today? If you want to keep finding the real stories behind the classic shows and the people who created them, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Every week, we go past the legend and into the life.